What's going on, guys? Harold here, Figuremania Show. Hope you guys are doing well wherever you are in the world. And in today's video, I'm giving you guys a look at S.H.Monsterarts' brand new release, Godzilla 1972. And I've spent a few days with this figure so far, and man, I really love this figure. He photographs so awesomely, and this figure just brings back a lot of childhood memories. I had to go back and rewatch Godzilla vs. Gigan, where this figure is inspired from. And man, what a treat to finally have this figure in hand. So if you guys are fans of Godzilla vs. Gigan 1972, you guys don't want to miss this figure. I think this figure is absolutely awesome. And it's awesome for toy photography. For those of you watching that watch me because you guys like my toy photography, you should not miss this figure. Now, I know I am late in coming through the door. Everybody else has put out their reviews and things, you know, but you know, I figured out, what the heck, I'll just do my review. I'll give you guys my thoughts and opinions on this figure, and I'll show you my toy photography, and that's pretty much it. And you guys decide for yourselves whether you guys feel like getting this figure or not. So let's move on to the next section, which is the sculpt and articulation and all that. So upon getting this figure, you know, you do get a second head with this figure, which is pretty cool to see. So you get the busted head, you know, the bloodied head. If you recall, in the movie, Gigan hits him a few times right here in between the eyes, and he starts bleeding and things. And I think they did a pretty good job in terms of the paint app on the blood and things, and it's pretty cool. All right, now I just want to show you guys, because like the head that's on this figure is pretty much the exact same. It's just different painting and things. So unfortunately, a lot of people did mention that, you know, you can't really, with this head or either head, you can't really close the mouth all the way. So this is as much as you can close it. There are people out there that are modifying their figures so that they can close the mouth. So I just want to show you guys on screen a couple pictures from my friend, the Articulation series. He's modified his to where the mouth can fully close. So he apparently he dug out the gums using a Dremel and things, and then he had to repaint you know, the inside of the mouth and things. So that's how he was able to do that. So I'm kind of inspired to do the same thing with my figure, because I like the you know, the closed mouth look. The S.H.Monsterarts brand has come a long way from, you know, in terms of like engineering and sculpt. Like, I did notice while I was photographing this figure, how the differences, and I would say improvements in the engineering of the articulation has been. So you know, you get your standard head. I mean, that really depends on like each Godzilla design too and things, right? So you got pretty good movement at the head and at the neck. You can look all the way down and things, and also swapping out the head is very easy. So that's very cool. All right, and then you know, the ease of like posability on the arms and things, okay, and especially like on the wrists area, the bends at the elbows, all very good. Okay, and this was, I believe this was sculpted by Yuji Sakai. So, you know, when it comes to like Godzilla, you know, figures that are based on Godzilla suits, you know, S.H.Monsterarts, and especially Yuji Sakai, like, they don't go wrong in their sculpts. But when it comes to like CG rendered characters, you know, S.H.Monsterarts is pretty much a hit or miss in terms of that. Now, I really like the color. I mean, this, you know, this reminds me very much as to, you know, how Godzilla looked back in that movie, you know. So you got like the silver, you know, the silver highlights on his dorsal fins, and this one can wiggle a bit. I believe you can pull it out, I believe, but I don't want to do that here on camera. Okay, so, and also too, I think S.H.Monsterarts has really taken the time to improve the the engineering, because now, whereas, before, like whenever you would like, pose a figure like this, like there's clearly these gaps and stuff, but they seem to have included like these floating pieces within the figure to minimize those gappages. So you can see that here in the leg area too, so which is a nice touch. I mean, if you saw my review for Godzilla 91, that figure has the exact same thing. Okay, and I really like the range of posing for the legs on this figure and things. So like even in the movie, like this suit was very mobile. Okay, and as opposed to like the high size suits, they're bigger, clunkier, and I guess they're a lot more stiffer, for the actor to move around and things. But one thing that to notice here is just the engineering in the tail has really improved since 91. Now all the ball joints go all the way to the very end, to the very tip here, and look at that. I mean, that's incredible. That's amazing. I mean, especially now, like for the newer generations of SH.Monsterarts figures, I mean, that you can get this kind of posing out of the tails, like as opposed to before, the first generation SH.Monsterarts, like the high side figures and stuff like that, their tails were very stiff and they would pop off, if you try to overpose them and things. But nothing's popped off with this guy so far, as opposed to like me switching out the heads and things. So this figure is just really good, and he feels really nice too, and like very posable. It's very, I don't feel the need to use a hair dryer. So like in the past, where like when you get SH.Monsterarts figures out of the box and they're stiff, like what I normally use is just a hair dryer just to loosen them up, and then I'm able to get that more range, get that range out of him. But I haven't had to do that here with this figure here. So out of the box, he feels just awesome. So giving you a comparison to other Showa Godzilla figures that you may have in your collection. Now, I don't have the 64 figure with me, so I'll just have to make do with what I have here. So over here I have the 54 and I have the 62, which great figures. I mean, love these two movies, and like Showa figures, they have its charm, but like you can see, like over the years, I mean, their SH.Monsterarts scaling for like each of these figures have always been inconsistent, to say the least, you know what I mean? So the scaling has always been all over the place, in my opinion. So it's never been totally consistent in things. So let me bring out other figures that I might have. So let me just get these guys out of here. Here I have the S.H.Monsterarts Mecha Godzilla 73. I think it's a 73. I can't remember. I think it is. And this is Gigan 72. So, I mean, when you now these two scale perfectly with each other, because like they're meant to, this is like from the movie, this is Godzilla 72, Gigan 72, and having these two in my collection and doing toy photography is just fun. It's just a great treat, you know what I mean? So I've been able to do a lot of cool stuff with these two guys here. Now when it comes to like this guy right here, unfortunately, I mean, like, he's out of scale, you know what I mean? But you can make it work. I mean, just because, like, this figure is taller than this figure here. If you're a skilled toy photographer like myself and things, I mean, you can find ways of giving the illusion that Mecha Godzilla is taller or bigger, or even like a bigger threat. Just put something underneath him, like when you're doing photography and stuff like that, to make him appear taller. Or use the perspective, the perspective shots and stuff, you know what I mean? So there are ways to getting around those limitations of like the figure being smaller than this, you know what I mean? So that shouldn't be that shouldn't worry you, or that shouldn't break your enjoyment, you know what I mean? So you can still do it, okay? So anybody saying that, oh, because these, you know, this is a smaller figure, you can't, no, they're not a skilled, they're not a skilled toy photographer, and I will say that, okay? And I take pride in that. And finally, I want to show this off here. So this is such a charming piece to have in your collection. This is the Toho Maniacs Godzilla Tower. So having this in my collection finally just really helped elevate my shots and you know, recreating those scenes from Godzilla 1972. So for those of you that are fans of Godzilla 1972, I mean, having these two, you guys should definitely have it, especially along with Gigan. Alrighty, and hopefully this is a sign that, you know, we're getting more Showa stuff. So, you know, we need Ghidorah, we need Ghidorah, and we need Anguirus, you know what I mean? So to round out the cast of this movie. So hopefully we will see them sooner than later. So for my final thoughts on this figure, yes, it's definitely worth getting, and lots of fun. And if you are a fan of the Showa series, if you're a fan of Godzilla 1972, definitely this is awesome. And, you know, it's so nostalgic to have this in my collection and things. All right, guys, so thank you so much for watching, guys. Please stay tuned to the end, and I will show you the behind the scenes of my toy photography, and I will see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.